Okay, well, it's a couple minutes after 1, and we're going to go ahead and get started here. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Mike Martinez. I'm the Financial Systems Operations Manager at the Maricopa County School Superintendent's Office. Welcome to our little mini session. We are doing our session today on payroll encumbrances. The thing I like about this session is that I already had all the notes for this session from 10 years ago, and it remains exactly the same. So if you happen to see me do this presentation 10 years ago, you can go ahead and log off now because you've already gone through everything. If not, we're going to go through all the screens here today. We are going to be using the core app or the Windows application, however you want to go through it. But if you happen to have if you're using the web app, all the screens are essentially the same. You're going to go to them in the same places and they're going to have the same functionality. So either one, you're going to be good to go. What we're going to talk about today, we're going to talk about the difference between how the system encumbers salaries versus benefits. We're also going to talk about the difference between a pre-encumbrance of payroll items versus an actual encumbrance of payroll items. And then at the end, we'll kind of roll up with some common mistakes that we find when working with districts dealing with payroll encumbrances. So let's start with the easy stuff first. Let's talk about actual salaries encumbrances. So salary encumbrances are essentially your payroll journal. So if I went into a position, so I'm going to open up payroll and wiggle my mouse a little bit. That always speeds it up in my mind. I'll go into employee positions and pay. This is a training database, so don't bother writing down any social security numbers. It's not going to do you any good. I'll bring up my favorite Candy Apple, and I'm going to pull up her certified teacher position. Okay. Now, within the position itself, I'll look at the pay tab. I see she's due to be paid. This is this fiscal year that we're in right now is for fiscal year 24, and we've only run payroll, I believe, up till November or December, so we still have half a year worth of stuff on here. So you're going to see actual numbers. Everything's going to be the same, essentially, no matter what fiscal year you're in, but I like this setup this way because it gives me an opportunity to show you some new things. So going into the distribution tab, I see a couple of things here. I see the calculated distribution screen and I see the payroll journal down here at the bottom. Now I see all the posted items, but when I scroll down here and when I start hitting the unposted items, these are what the system would consider encumbered payroll salaries for this person. So it says, you can see I have the 2486. If it says unposted, it means it's going to show up in the system as an encumbrance and not an actual. Up here, the calculated is sort of your real-time indication of what may be encumbered if you happen to generate your payroll journals at that time. If you've been in the screen at any particular point in time, you click OK, you've probably seen that message that says payroll journals are going to be recalculated. Click OK, and you click OK. What that does is if you make any changes to this employee position, it's going to automatically recalculate these payroll journals and the encumbrance associated with them. So let's take a look at the difference here. So if I go into this pay tab and I say, instead of 64,000, I'm going to let's do 99,000. Really well compensated teacher here. Go back into the distribution tab. And if I look at my calculated distribution, when I scroll down here, once I hit pay period 11, I can see that this jumps up because I increased her pay right now. But if I scroll down to my payroll journal, which matches my encumbrance, I can see it still has the 2486 on there. So until I generate the payroll journals for this position, the salary benefits encumbrance or salary encumbrance is not correct for this particular person. Fortunately, for most things, the system will automatically generate that for you and not really give you the opportunity to not encumber those salaries correctly. Every once in a while, though, you may run into an issue. In that case, if you're seeing some weirdness in your system, there's actually a little checkbox here that says Generate Pay Journal. You can check that box and click OK, and it will forcibly regenerate all your payroll journals for you and fix your encumbrances for that person. And that is the basics of how the system is encumbering your salary on there. There's not a whole lot to it. Just look for your unposted journals and you're going to be fine. So the other way you can look at it, if I'm going to go ahead and cancel out of here, go back to the main menu, and I'm going to go to the employee journal screen, and I'm going to pull up my same candy apple. And I'm going to remove the pay period here because I want to see all the pay periods for this particular here. I'm going to hit payroll journal and the deduction journal because I want to see everything, and I'm greedy. And I'm going to go ahead and scroll down this list here and squeeze this a little bit tighter. All right. I can see over here the same thing. Your status, your posted versus unposted. It will show me all the encumbrances associated with this position. The same thing as if I went in there by individual through employee maintenance. So you can do it in either screen. In the position itself, it will give you the opportunity to regenerate those payroll journals, especially if you're making changes. So those usually don't get messed up. Salary journals, pretty straight and dry, straight and forward, pretty cut and dry. Now, where it starts getting a little bit wonky is when you start talking about things like benefits encumbrance and where your benefits come from. And this is the one that you actively have to manage at your district. And this, quite honestly, is probably the biggest issue as far as encumbering anything on the payroll side at your district is having correct and accurate benefits encumbrances for your positions. So the big thing is benefits encumbrance must be explicitly created by someone in payroll. Someone has to run a process to encumber those benefits. Now, it may be behind the scenes, but somebody has to click a button for that to happen. If that button doesn't get clicked, then you're not going to see those benefits encumbrance. So I know you're all are probably got all your positions in, or at least a decent chunk of your positions in for the new fiscal year. Unless you're going through and you run that process to encumber those benefits, there's nothing in there for the year at this point. And so we'll take a look at that in just a second. Second of all, benefit encumbrance, it does not change and it does not get created automatically. So if you hire a new person in October, they're not going to be encumbered with benefits until you actually run a process to do so. Just like if you terminate an employee 2 weeks into July, their benefits encumbrance, if you already have them encumbered, it's not going to relieve that encumbrance until you run a process to relieve that encumbrance for that employee. So it has to be actively maintained. So where can you look at how do you create and you maintain benefits encumbrance? So we're going to go into, let's see. We'll go back into employee maintenance. And I am going to open up my favorite candy apple. And from here, I'm going to go up to actions and I'm going to go to the payroll journal. And I'm going to go to a future pay period. So let's say I see I'm working on pay period 12 here. So down here, this is all the information that you're actually going to pay or is going to show up on the employee's payroll paycheck. These are all your benefits encumbrances. Benefit encumbrances. If you see numbers down here, it means you have benefits that are encumbered. That doesn't mean they are correct. That just means that is the dollar amount that you are encumbering for that particular person. And at this particular moment, if you ran that check today, those are the closest approximation that the system has of what they're going to earn. It's going to be recalculated when you run it anyway. But as far as your general ledger is concerned, these are what your encumbrances are going to look like. Now, if you come in here and say something happens, maybe they have a kid and now they are on family insurance, or they move positions and now they qualify for, to qualify for some other deduction that you didn't have on them previously. If you go up to actions within this payroll journal, there's two options in here to be aware of. There's compute and there's compute all year. The compute will take this particular pay period that I'm looking at and will recalculate all of the benefits, employee and employer side version of those benefits for this particular pay period. It runs relatively quick. I can go and click OK. Done computing deductions. You can see that some of these numbers did in fact change in here. If you were watching closely, those numbers did in fact change in there. You guys do this all the time already. But this is the end result on this is that it is updating the encumbrance that you have for this particular person in this particular position or this particular pay period. There's another option up here, options, actions, compute all year. So this will compute every other pay period for the remainder of the year that this person is attached to that has not been processed yet. It actually runs relatively fast. So if I go ahead and click OK, it's going to go ahead and do its thing here. Bada bing, bada boom. Done computing deductions. Now, if I look at any other pay period from here on out, I am going to see that all my deductions are there and all my dollar amounts are currently updated as of right now. If they change 2 weeks from now, I would have to run through this process again. So the thing to remember is this is how you update one person at a time. So if it should be part of your termination checklist. It should be part of your hiring checklist. It should be part of those processes whenever you're bringing somebody on board, whenever you're offboarding somebody, or whenever you're making a significant change to an employee. You should come through here and run a compute all year for that person because it will make sure that their position is set up on the general ledger side, that their position is encumbering the correct amount of money for that particular person. But, doing it one person at a time can be some major tedious crap, because if you're doing stuff in payroll, do you ever have a situation where you only have like one par come across your desk at a time, or one termination come across your desk, or one new hire? That never happens. You're always going to have like a stack of papers or a stack of pars to go through. Fortunately, there is a way to bulk do this for everybody. Going back to the main menu here, and I am going to go down to payroll processing and process payroll. If I go up to actions, there's an option here that says compute selected periods. Click this. What it's going to do is going to show me a list of all of the people or all of the unposted pay periods from here to the end of the year for this particular pay cycle I'm on, or actually for all my pay cycles. I just have the one in here. What it will do is I can select the pay period. So I'm just going to say, let's say pay period 17 and 18, just for giggles. There's an option here that says limit to, oh, we got a wild mic somewhere. Hold on a second. Is that us? Is that one of us? Nope. So it did have. Yep, found him. It was you, Trish. All right. So anyways, so there's a couple of options on here. You can do it by group. If you use employee groups in here, is a great way to do bunches of employees. If you're using the web version of School ERP Pro, they are really pushing use of groups for everything within the system from this point forward. So if you haven't decided, if you're on the fence on whether you want to bother implementing groups, I can tell you, you might as well go ahead and bite the bullet and start working on segmenting out your employee population, putting them into groups. That will make your life a lot easier at some point going forward. The other option in here is where you can limit to changed employees. Now, some of your districts, you probably have several hundred, several thousand employees that you're working on. Do you need to calculate all of them all the time? No, absolutely not. Some of them, they're already going to be done. So if you just hit this little checkbox here, it will only calculate those ones that have any recent changes to them. So it will save you some time on processing. For the purpose of this, I am not going to select that box. I'm just going to go ahead and compute everybody. So I'm going to select pay period 17 and 18, and I'm going to go ahead and click OK. Says here, there are potentially 43 employees to compute. Not every employee has pay for every period. Do you wish to continue? So yeah, sure. Let's go ahead and do that. The question is, the question came in, will this cause the glitch for payroll processing if you are on the page while doing this and someone else decides to run the calculation The glitch where it's stuck on a step or an odd posting of the GL. You absolutely do not. You want to run this independently of anyone even being in payroll. If you can. This is one of those things where I would recommend you do towards the end of the day. If you're doing a full year's worth of calculation, this is you turn it on, you start it running, and then you walk out the door. And then you come back tomorrow morning and you see if it finished up. And some of these processes can run kind of long. You should never do this sort of computing processes where you have other people within payroll that are making changes. So just keep them out of there. Could it cause a glitch where it's odd posting? Absolutely. Absolutely. Can I guarantee it will? No. Computers are weird things. Sometimes you get away with it and sometimes you can't. But this is one of those process intensive things that I would run by itself if you can. So this one ran relatively quick. This is a small district. There's only 43 employees in this training district. So I'm going to go and click done computing pay periods. I did get a report pop up. Let's take a look here. All right. I see a lot of federal tax errors in here. Can't locate tax amount for blah, blah, blah. Married filing M, married on 2024. If you ran this right now, if anyone, I would say 90% of the people within this webinar or watching this later on YouTube, if you ran this right now, it being July 9th, you're going to get a ton of these messages if you're calculating pay periods for anything in calendar year 2025, because those tax tables aren't out yet. So it's going to give you these messages. What the system will do is it will calculate all of the other deductions. But when it comes to a deduction that you don't have a tax table for, what it will do is it will put in an amount. If you have an employee that, say, wants to withhold an additional amount, like $50 or an extra $100 out of their pay period, you'll see it calculate for that dollar amount, but you won't see anything else. Everything else for federal tax will be zero. And there's a couple schools of thought on how you want to handle that, but let's go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and fix this right now. So I'm going to close my report here. And I'm going to go into deductions and benefits. I'm going to find my federal tax deduction. And I am going to update taxes. And this happens to be just because tax year for 2024 wasn't in this training database. So now I'm going to put in 2024. Problem is, if I go to do the same thing for 2025, there's not going to be anything there. So how do you get around that? What are your options? You have two options. One, you could leave it. It is an employee-only side deduction. It doesn't affect your encumbrance at all because that's already included within the salary encumbrance that you have for that position. Do you need it in there? You don't. You really don't. You can get by and just leave it blank and wait until the 2025 taxes come out. You will have those employees, especially as you get towards the end of the year, where they want to know, well, what's my check going to look like in January? What's my balance of contract going to look like at the end of this year if I stay right now? They'll come in there. They might want some of their tax information right now. You're just not going to have it available. There's two ways you could do this. No taxes have been updated for year 2025. You could either leave it blank, and that's perfectly fine. In fact, since all the other deductions actually compute, even if it is blank, I would very much err on the side of just leave it the way it is. In the past, it used to actually cause an error where it wouldn't calculate anything else for that particular employee. And we used to tell people to come in here, go up to actions, set up, and then actually come in here and copy their tax table from the current year into the next year. So you could actually copy calendar year 24 into calendar year 25 and just have something in there as a placeholder that will let the calculation go through without any errors. So if the errors really bug you, or the warnings really bug you, you can put that in there, and that would be just fine. The downside of that is now that you have numbers in there, it's not going to bug you anymore. So when you come up and you start running those first couple of pay periods for 2025, if they are incorrect, it will not tell you that they are incorrect. Someone in there, someone at your district will have to go in and manually or run through that process to update your tax information for the next calendar year. All the time. Someone will have to go in there every year. Somebody will have to go in there and just double check and just run that process. It's easy to do. It is easier to forget. What is not easy to forget is when you try to run a payroll and then it just blitzes out and dies on you. So there's my suggestion is just leave it blank. Any questions on how those benefits are encumbered? We good so far? Kind of understanding? All right, cool. All right. Let's talk about pre-encumbrance. I'm gonna go back to my main menu here. Close some windows. So what's the difference between an actual encumbrance and a pre-encumbrance? So an actual encumbrance is the district's obligation to pay that bill, that employee, that benefit. Okay, it is attached to a contract. It is based on the legal requirements of your district and the agreement with the employee to pay X amount of dollars for whatever it is you need. It is something that you must pay. A pre-encumbrance in this system, a pre-encumbrance is optional. It's something you might pay for any particular reasons. You're going to see it primarily on vacant positions, and you're going to see it on 0-hour positions. And I'll show you what each one of those look like. But they require special attention in order to actually pre-encumber that dollars. And there's a couple things you need to do first. So let's go into. We're actually going to pop over into the general ledger really quick. And believe it or not, I actually have run into recently a couple of districts that did not have this option turned on. Although I wouldn't know, I don't know why you wouldn't, but to each their own. In the general ledger default settings, right here, right in the budget information, there's a little checkbox there that says track payroll pre-encumbrance. If that box is not on, you're never going to see any sort of pre-encumbrance, which is all your vacancies, all your 0-hour positions. You're not going to see any of that information in the general ledger. So there's not going to be any anticipation, which depending on how fluid your employee population is, it might not matter. If you're not hiring and terming a lot of people very often, it's probably not a big deal. But if you're like most districts, especially within the greater metropolitan area, there is a constant movement of employees on board, off board, that's going to require a little more management on how those vacant positions and whether or not your ability to hire is going to be impacted by how much money you have available. So we're going to turn on that all option here for track payroll pre-encumbrance. I'm going to go ahead and click OK. We'll go back into payroll and back into positions and pay. I'm just gonna hit apply selection here. All right, so let's talk about vacant positions first. I'm going to pick one out here. Let's check out this teacher. All right, so pre-encumbrance for a vacant position is based off what I refer to as an encumbrance ratio. Okay, encumbrance ratio is a ratio of how much pay you have left to pay that particular employee. So if you have, if I'm looking at the work calendar here, and I'm going to open up Excel here really quick. So look at the work calendar. I have a 176-day work calendar. So I'm going to go here, 176, work calendar. And let me enlarge this a little bit so a little bit easier to see. All right. And looking at the position, this is position amount is $56,010. So 56. Put some dollar signs on there. All right. So your benefits, your pre-encumbrance, your encumbrance ratio is going to be the number of days left in the work calendar divided by the total number of days on the work calendar. And then that will give you the percent left of the school year left. Then multiply that by the salary or the total position amount, and that's how much the system is going to pre-encumber for it. So this says 176 days in the day calendar. I'm not going to count these days off. I don't have that kind of math in me right now. It's 1:30 in the afternoon, and my brain isn't there right now. So I'm just going to make up a number. So let's say we've worked 80 days, or let's say let's say we worked 80 days so far in the work calendar, which leaves us. So we have 96 days left in a year. So our encumbrance ratio is going to be number of days left in a year divided by total number of days. And then our pre-encumbered salary amount is going to be this, the total, times the encumbrance ratio. So the pre-encumbrance for this position is $30,550. And the system will kind of manage that for you in the background, but that is how that dollar amount has come to as far as pre-encumbrance for these vacant positions are. Does that make sense? Kind of makes sense. Throws you back to some old math problems, just short of the train A leaving from point B, going to point C and crosses train D. It's a little bit simpler than that, but that's what the system is breaking down for. So it's going to have all those pre-encumbrance ratios in the background for you just to figure out what those salary dollar amounts are. So the other part of salary pre-encumbrance is going to be a 0-hour position. So I'm going to go and click cancel here, and I'm going to bring up Candy Apple. And I'm going to pick her, let's pick this ELL position. Now, if I go to the pay tab on this position, I can see that this position is 0 hours per day. There is a field down here that now says pre-encumbrance, and there's a dollar amount in here. Now, this will only show up for positions that are 0 hours per day because those are your onesie twosies. They may be in on Friday. They may be on Tuesday. You don't know. They show up when they show up. They show up when you need them, right? So it's really hard to calculate what an encumbrance is going to be for a position that has very spotty attendance for a very spotty work schedule like that. So the system allows you to guesstimate to your best of your ability what the encumbrance should be for this particular position. So, for example, let's say this is for an ELL Friday school. So I'm going to say my pre-encumbrance for this position is going to be $1,000. I expect to spend $1,000 on this fiscal year for this particular person. So what the system will do is it'll take that $1,000. It'll look at this, however much you've actually paid this position year to date. So if this one hasn't been run yet, but let's just say we paid them $100. What the system will do is it will pre-encumber the difference between whatever dollar amount you put in here and whatever dollar amount that you've paid fiscal today. So if this was $100 and this was $1,000, it would pre-encumber $900, and it would keep that encumbrance dollar amount until you pay that position again, and it would adjust it down every single time you run payroll. It only does it for 0-hour positions. In fact, if I came in here and I'm going to zero this dollar amount out, and if I change this to 1 hour a day, that pre-encumbrance field now grays out, so I can't even put anything in there anymore. It only shows up for $0 positions. Does that make sense as to why you would do that? Just tracking, again, it is a guesstimate, a best guess, or whatever you have budgeted for that position. You might want to put that in there. but it will track that over time for the course of the year. And as you get closer to that dollar amount, is it going to stop you? No. It will just blow right through that, and you'll have to adjust that pre-encumbrance amount if you want to keep it in there. Okay. So let's talk about benefits for pre-encumbrance. How do you encumber benefits for pre-encumbrance? So there is, unfortunately, in my mind, they put the encumbrance for payroll benefits in the most unusual places in the general ledger where you don't have any access to, or most of you don't have any access to. So if I go into the general ledger, it is under budgeting. There is a section in here under position budget modeling. There's a position called position budget templates. You can tell it's named exactly like you think it is. It's not called benefit pre-encumbrance at all. It is position budget template, which is, in my mind, bad naming, but it is what it is. Luckily, this will be on video, so you can refer back to it later if you need to. But your position budget template, if I open this up, what the system will allow you to do is to create a template, kind of like the way you do your position templates or things. You set a general set of ground rules as to how things are going to run for this position, right? So let's add a new position budget template. And we're going to call this teacher. Let's say teacher. And from here, and I'm just going to close this really quick. Now that I have it in there, and I'm going to add position budget benefits masks in here. So I'm going to go ahead and click to add a record for position budget benefit name. So I'm going to say benefit name ASRS. What's my offset is going to be, where's retirement? I'm going to look for the employer retirement expense. The employer amount. What is what is rates? 12 what? 12.25. Somebody out there knows, right?
12.
Jill's saying 27.
12.27. Okay. And you can break this out if you want to. You can do it LTD versus normal retirement if you really wanted to get into that nitty gritty. It's entirely up to you. As long as you have an account offset for it, you're fine. There it is. 12.15 and 15. All right, let's do 12. And then we could choose whether to have pre-encumbrance calculated for this on all positions, on just supplementals, or on no positions. I don't know why you would put a pre-encumbrance on here and then choose not to pre-encumber anything. I'm sure there's a use case for it. I just don't know what it is. So, but since this is ASRS, I am going to assume that all positions that our district creates are going to need that amount in there. So I'm going to go click OK, and I'll do ASRS LTD. And again, I'm going to look for the employer offset. And then let's look for Social Security. And I'm only going to put in those items that are employer related. I'm not going to bother putting in anything if it's employee related. It just doesn't matter. And so on and so forth. And I would keep on going through this for anything at my district that has an employer side portion. So all of your benefits. Thanks, Jill. Thanks. Too late. I already put it in. We've moved past that. It's 12, 12, and then 15. Okay. Thanks. Let's go fix that because someone's going to look at this later and like, oh, I didn't know that. There we go. All right. So you're only going to you're putting in your employer side benefits in here. So you have health insurance, workers' comp, all your FICAs are in here, Arizona State Retirement, anything that you have an employer side, you're going to go ahead and put in here and then go ahead and click OK. Cancel out of here. and just going to double check that I now have my position benefits masks in here. But there's also a second step that you have to do. So I'm going to close out of this screen. Now that I have a position budget template, I need to go back into payroll. Oh, I still have that screen open. I'll go back into payroll. I'm going to clear this. I'm going to go back and just look at my vacant positions. And I'm just going to pick one or two of these out. So I'm going to take this teacher position. If I open this up, on this first information pay screen, which to be honest, most of us just kind of skip through at this point because all that stuff is set by HR. Someone at HR did that many, many moons ago, and we're just going to blow on through that. But when you're adding something new, this is where this particular piece of information lies. So on the employee position pay, on the information tab, there is a drop down for the position budget template. Now it only matters if it's a vacant position. Can you put it on all positions? Yes, that's fine. It's not going to bug anything. In fact, if you happen to create a vacancy off of that position and then leave that vacancy in the system, you already have the position budget template associated with it. But someone needs to come in here, they'll select teacher, click OK, make sure that they have a position budget template. It's going to give me a little message because process and payroll is, yep, blah, blah, blah. The cool thing about this, I'll let this save, is under actions, there is a mass update. And lo and behold, position budget template is in here. And I will go ahead and set that to teacher. It doesn't matter. It's a training database. Normally you would filter your grid down to whatever you want to set that to. You might have different ones. You're going to have different ones for like bus drivers. You're going to have different ones for teachers. You're going to have different ones because all of your benefits are going to be tied to those. Think of it as like the employee template or the employee template, which has all the deductions and what deductions are going to be assigned to each person. You're going to do essentially the same thing here. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. A reason for change is required because Mike said so. It's good to be king. All right, so if I open any one of these up, just to verify, Jill likes to say, trust but verify. So we're going to trust it. We're going to pop in here. Yep, there it is. There's my teacher benefit budget template. Click OK. Yep. Just like in a run there, it's saying. All right. Now we have our benefits template set up. We have assigned it to the vacant positions. Like I said, you can go one step further. You can assign it to everybody, every type of positions at your district. It's entirely up to you. Again, this is just training, so I just want to make sure we get through this. So I'm going to go back into the general ledger. I'm going to go into, there's a screen in here called position pre-encumbrances and then position pre-encumbrances. And I'll select both and go ahead and click apply selection. So I just assigned those benefit templates out there. Okay, so if I'm looking at this screen, the only thing I see in this list are salary benefits, are the salaries for all those vacant positions or those $0 per hour positions are going to be in here. And I can see, remember we talked about the encumbrance ratio? This is the encumbrance ratio right here. So this is the amount of days that you have left and the amount of dollar amounts that's going to be encumbered for this position. This is the amount of encumbrance that's going on that position. But there's no benefits in here. Why? Because we just added that benefit template. Remember, benefits are one of those things that you have to explicitly do something in order to encumber those benefits in the system. There are two ways to do this. One, you run payroll. Somewhere within payroll, and I'm assuming it's in step 4, it's not documented anywhere. And to be honest, it hasn't bugged me enough for me to actually go in and test where that process takes place. But embedded within that step 1 through 9 of your payroll processing, there is a process that recalculates all of your pre-encumbrances for your payroll positions. And it does that for you. It does that behind the scenes without telling you about it. And that's awesome. because it's one less thing you have to worry about. It's just updated and it's just done. But when you're making a lot of initial changes like we're doing here, when we're creating that template from scratch and we're putting in these deductions and we want to see where we are, you can come into this position pre-encumbrance screen. Under the actions item, there's an option that says calculate pre-encumbrance for payroll. Think of this as the compute all year for pre-encumbrances. This is that version of that. So I'm going to go ahead and click calculate pre-encumbrances. All positions and pre-encumbrance information created. And now looking in here, I can see my benefits are pre-encumbered. I can see the dollar amounts associated with them. And depending on the position associated, it's going to be affected by the same encumbrance ratio that we saw the salaries encumbered for. So it is just a best guess estimate, but it's going to get you closer than you would be if you didn't have that in there. So if you carry a lot of vacant positions that you have out there, whether you have an intent to fill them or not, this is a good indicator that will tell you where you are budget-wise. If you hired all these people today, this is how much money you're going to end up spending for the rest of the year. Any questions on how that works? Okay. All right. That is the gist of it. So let's go back. We talked about actual encumbrance versus pre-encumbrance. We talked about benefits. We talked about benefit templates. So I want to talk really quick about what we run into from our point of view, working as support for School ERP Pro in the county office here. What are the big things that we run into that seems to cause district issues? The number one thing, the number one thing we see, or let's start with number 5. So, not pre-encumbering benefits for vacant positions. If you have, everyone out there has trouble hiring. We know it, you know it, it's been in the news. Everybody knows that schools have a hard time hiring anybody because it's tough to find not only teachers to fill all these positions that you need, specialty teachers to fill those positions. I mean, look around the office in you. How many vacant desks do you have in your office that would normally have somebody there if your district could find someone that stuck around longer than the initial 2 weeks to work at your district? It's a hard position to fill. If you're not encumbering those positions on there, especially if you have an intent to, or those benefits and those salaries, especially if you have an intent to hire those people, it's going to be a shortage when you get towards the end of the year. You know, if your finance team is not managing that correctly, it could be an issue. That is one of those things that requires the help of HR and payroll to make sure that those dollar amounts that they are seeing on their end of the system in the general ledger accurately reflects where their district is in this process. Another thing is unintentionally encumbering things that should not be encumbered. So if you gave a one-time pay to somebody, make sure that your position dates on that position are done. Make sure you put the end dates, the ending pay period, the beginning pay period, and the dates for that position should match whatever that pay period is. Because if you don't, the system is still going to continue to calculate that out. And there might not necessarily be dollar amounts associated with it sometimes, but you are letting the system calculate something for you that it really should not be, because that position is gone. So for those one-time pays, put those dates in there so that it only affects that position for the pay period or pay periods that you're going to be paying that position. So think of those as summer pays. Think of it, for, seasonal things like coaching, things like that, where you have certain seasons of the year. Make sure that you're terminating and starting those at the appropriate times so that they are encumbered or not encumbered unintentionally. Another thing, if a position has been vacant too long, how long do you actually plan to keep that position on the books? If you have a position in your position inventory that you have not had a person in there for a couple of years, there's no point in you kind of lose the intent, or you lose the point of having position control at that point. That is just a position that your district has essentially sacrificed for the greater good at some point. There is no need to carry around those old vacant positions. You can still go back if you decide at some point things get better. Maybe your ADM goes way up. Maybe you open up another school. Something happens down the line for the better good. You can still go in there and create a position for that, but stop carrying around vacant positions if you're not going to use them. And that's a decision that you'll make with your finance team as determined as like what kind of people, what kind of positions should we be carrying around. It was interesting. There was an article in the news a few days ago about ghost employees and not ghost employees, but ghost hiring, where districts will post position or not districts. I'm sorry. Districts are good employers. We're talking about bad employers. Like corporations will post positions with no intention of actually hiring for those positions, just to make the other people that worked for them feel better that, oh, we're hiring for this position. We just can't find anybody. It's not the case. It turns out that those corporations were actually just going through the process and not actually hiring anybody. So don't do crap like that. That is unmoral. So another thing that we run into a lot is over encumbering for terminated employees. Sometimes things happen in a rush. Sometimes, it's not in a checklist. But as I alluded to earlier, when you terminate an employee, even though you may end the position, all the benefits for that position remain out there until you go through and you compute the remainder of the year for that particular person or for the entire district as a whole. So you do one of two ways. You either make it part of your termination checklist, boom, you close the position, you issue the last paycheck, and then you do a compute all year on that person, and that relieves the encumbrance for that person for the remainder of the year. The other option is, and this is the one I kind of like make sure to do as well. I would do both of these. I would build it into some sort of monthly process that says, every month I'm going to go into the process payroll screen and do the compute selected periods for the remainder of the year. That means that helps the system catch up on all those things that you might miss. If someone changed from like maybe an individual and spouse coverage to individual and family coverage, those dollar amounts are going to change what affects your bottom line at the school district. So we kind of recommend to do that compute all year on a monthly basis. I've even seen some districts do it after every pay period they run it. That to me seems a little excessive, but I would at least do it once a month to do that. And on top of that, add it to my termination checklist as I'm exiting employees out of my district to ensure all of those dollar amounts are relieved in the encumbrance. And the number one mistake is not encumbering benefits at all. Like I said, making sure that you are encumbering those. At least you're running through that thing at least once a month to encumber those benefits. We find a lot of situations if it takes a long time for that process to run. In fact, I can guarantee you if most of you went into your system right now and you did a compute all year for fiscal year 25, it would be there for hours. And you might leave and you'll go home and you come back and it's like, oh, the screen's gone. It must have finished. Don't believe it's lies. I can guarantee you that you have probably maybe a 50-50 chance that it finished and then you got kicked off, or that it finished part ways and it looks like it finished, but it did not. So double check those pay periods, skip all the way out to like pay period 24, 25, 26. Do you see benefits in there right now? If you didn't, then it didn't happen. Double check those numbers. The sooner that you have those in there, once you have those employees, it's nice right now because you're probably concentrating on all your 12-month hourly people, you're concentrating on your 12-month salary people. You have that very limited subset of your population before your teachers start back. So do it now, get those people out of the way. And then when you start onboarding your teachers and they start making their way back to the district, remember that little option in there when you're in payroll processing? If not, I'm going to show you. Go into actions, compute selected period. This little option, the limit to change employees. Well, if you do it now for your 12-month people and then come back here after your teachers came on, you do this limit to change employees, you're now skipping all those 12-month people because they're already calculated. And then you move on with your life. And it makes that bit a little bit easier for you to manage for the remainder of the year. And this is the only time of year where you can really do something like that and have a huge impact. So do it now. It's, what is it, Tuesday afternoon? Don't do it now. But do it this week. Wait until this Thursday or this Friday evening after you get ready to walk out the door, and then kick that off. And then when you come back the next day, go to those last pay periods, see if they calculated out. If they did, you should be good. If not, you can go back and you can run a few at a time. I try and do, this is a training database. I'll do like 2, 3, 4, 5 at a time just to see those reports, see what comes up, just so I can manage to see, is there any issues that I'm not aware of? Do I have a deduction that's not on? Do I have, am I missing a pay period in there that is not showing up? So just you're working through that process. It is a big time of year for doing things like this. Somebody over in finance, I guarantee, is just waiting for you to click that button for them. So there you go. Any questions on how payroll or benefits encumbrance works, or the difference between actual or pre-encumbered items? Jill says, yes, you don't have to encumber all pay periods at once. You do in bundles. You have 5, 10 periods at a time. Yeah. Otherwise, you bog down the system. If you want to drag the entirety of your district to a screaming halt, go in here and select all pay periods right now. Click the button first thing in the morning. I guarantee you, somebody will be screaming right now. In fact, now that I think about it, I got a call today that something was running slow at a district. Now I'm going to go back and check and say, what was somebody doing at your district that slowed everything down? Because everything else seems to be running okay. But it will slow things down because it is very process intensive. You're essentially taking every employee and calculating every percentage and every dollar amount for every day of the year for the remainder of the year. That's what it's doing in a nutshell. And the fact that it finishes with just within a couple hours, to me, is actually kind of miraculous. So do them in bunches. Do them over the course of. You don't have to do them all right now, right this day. Do 5 today, do 5 tomorrow, do 5 the day after that. Do them in bunches, and then you'll be done within a few days. Okay. Any other questions? If you have a vacant hourly position, does that encumber? Yes. Depends on, well, yes, in one of two ways. So we cancel out of here. We'll go back into employee positions and pay. So I happen to have a vacant hourly position here somewhere. Let's find it. It's probably this one. No, that's the salary. Let's
look at your para. Yep.
So this is an hour position. It has hours per day. So it will pre-encumber this dollar amount. This is your pre-encumbrance, will be this dollar amount times your encumbrance ratio for how many days you have left in the year. So if you have 50% of the day, if you're halfway through the year, it's going to encumber about $12,000 and change, or pre-encumber $12,000 and change. So that's how, and if you have a position budget template here, it's going to encumber the benefits based off of that. What is the difference between a salary encumbrance and a salary liability? Terminology your encumbrance is going to be, your encumbrance is your obligation to pay, which is essentially what your liability is going to be. They're used in two different fashions because you don't look at 0200 object codes as encumbrance object codes. You look at them as liability codes. So it's one of those things that, for intents and purposes, it is identical into what it's trying to accomplish. But finance-wise, when you're talking about a liability and a liability account code, it operates in a different manner and goes into other areas that the encumbrance term is not really appropriate for. Any other good questions? Good questions. All right. I'll tell you what, this is going to be the end of our little mini session. Thank you for joining us today. We'll have the recording for this up on our YouTube channel in a couple of days. I'm going to try and get this done before we head off to ASBO, But if you were on earlier today, you realize that Mike has not done any of his ASBO presentations yet, so he needs to work on that this week before he drives down to Tucson on Wednesday. So between doing that and getting this video up there, I'm hoping to have them both done by the end of this week. And if you are on the registration for this, I will shoot you an email personally to say that this video is ready if you want to go back and watch it. If you're on the EASE user group, you're going to see a notification through there that you're going to have the new video ready on the website. So if you and any of your friends want a wild way to spend a Friday night or a Saturday, feel free to fire up YouTube and learn all your friends about payroll encumbrances.